When browsing platforms such as the Google Play Store, children are accessing video games that they think are adapted to their age based on the game's aesthetic features and age categorization. However, certain games might include features that can be risky for children. For example, monetization schemes based on targeted advertising or in-game purchases. These business models often involve collecting player data to tailor personalized marketing. This approach is integrated into game design to enhance player engagement, resulting in potential increased spending and exposure to advertisement. The problem is that this process frequently occurs without children's awareness or parental consent. Most video games are indeed either saying nothing about the data processing, or only informing players via the provision of a link towards their privacy policy. This document is generally long, complex, and full of legal wordings and broad statements about the data processing. Hence, this method does not match children's needs as they cannot understand those privacy policies. Moreover, it fails at prompting the child to request parental consent. This is an issue because children cannot legally consent to data processing. Below the age of 16 years old, the EU General Data Protection Regulation, also known as the GDPR, requires the holder of the parental responsibility to provide consent to any processing of their child's data. Member states of the European Union can nonetheless reduce this age threshold to a minimum of 13 years old, as it is the case, for example, in Belgium. Similar requirements also exist in other legal orders around the world. In addition, the consent of the parent but also the child cannot be valid without the provision of appropriate information. The GDPR states that this information should be presented in clear and plain language, in particular, if the information is specifically addressed to a child. Recital 58 precise that children merit specific protection and therefore any information and communication addressed to them should be in such a clear and plain language that they can easily understand it. Video games addressed to children should therefore present privacy information in a child-adapted way. We hence have to move from this situation to this situation. But how can we effectively communicate privacy information to children? Our paper addresses this issue in 2 steps. Firstly, by providing an overview of age-appropriate information design strategies that can be used by game designers to inform children about privacy. Secondly, by assessing the implementation of those strategies in 9 different free-to-play video games. In our overview, we identified 36 different of age-appropriate information design strategies. Those strategies were recommended by data protection authorities, children rights associations, and the academic literature. We then classified them into 7 categories, which are language, length, accessibility, nudging techniques, timing, parental involvement, and communication format. This last category is composed of 4 subcategories, which includes textual format but also non-textual formats such as visual, auditory, and multisensorial formats. To make those design strategies a bit less abstract, let's now take a look at few examples. For instance, to apply the strategy of layering the information, designers can use clickable buttons to provide additional information where needed, thus avoiding overwhelming the player with unnecessary information. Those shorter explanations can also be combined with the use of icons. Another way to adapt the provision of information to children is to use drawings of friendly characters to support the information. Additionally, nudging techniques such as reading time estimation and progress visualization can keep the player motivated. Finally, providing the right information at the right time is also essential. For example, stating that the age provided for age verification won't be stored at the moment when it is required. Now that you know a bit more about the different types of age-appropriate information design strategies, we can focus on the assessment of the implementation of those strategies. We reviewed their implementation in 9 different free-to-play video games that were selected in the Kids section of the Google Play Store. We chose 3 games from each of the 3 different age-based categories available in this section, namely, ages up to 5, ages from 6 to 8, and ages from 9 to 12. All of the selected games were committed to following the Google Play Families policy, which includes the requirement of complying with the US COPPA and the EU GDPR. We therefore assumed that the selected games would score a high degree of implementation of age-appropriate information design strategies. Besides, we tested every game using mobile devices with Belgian IP addresses, what means that the reviewed games were covered by the application of the GDPR. For each game, we therefore walked through the game's interfaces and privacy policies and reviewed the implementation of the design strategies. We then recorded the results into a large Excel table that we call the evaluation matrix. For each design strategy, we evaluated the extent to which the game was implementing the strategy. If the strategy was successfully implemented, we labeled the cell associated with this strategy in green. Then, by summing up all the green cells and dividing this number by 36, which is the total amount of the design strategies, we calculated the implementation rate of each game. Overall, the average implementation rate was only 23.14%. We can therefore conclude that the reviewed games do not sufficiently implement age-appropriate information design strategies. Furthermore, as key results, our review demonstrated that none of the privacy policies assessed are sufficiently adapted to children. All games considerably prefer textual format over non-textual formats. Only 2 out of 9 games prominently display their privacy policy when starting the game's app, although all games are collecting players' personal data. None of the games request parental consent before processing children's data. Our assessment has nonetheless some limitations. Firstly, the results only concern the 9 games that we reviewed and thus cannot be generalized to other games. Although it can be argued that the selected games are at least symbolically representative of a larger population of free-to-play games, as they are supposed to meet high standards of age appropriateness. Secondly, the assessment of the implementation of certain strategies involves a certain degree of interpretation. The results thus only reflect our own appreciation, which can eventually differ from those of others. Additionally, all strategies do not have the same weight in the evaluation. Some might be more effective than others, while some can become counterproductive if not used wisely. This difference of weight was however not considered in our assessment, as further empirical research is needed to determine which strategies are the most effective and how they can be best implemented into actual designs. To that end, we recommend game designers to test and evaluate their information designs with the involvement of children and their parents. Finally, it is important to understand that the assessed strategies are not mandatory on themselves but are rather recommendations to fulfill the legal obligation of adequately informing children about privacy. The lack of implementation of certain strategies in the reviewed games thus cannot automatically be interpreted as leading to an infringement of data protection law. To conclude, we would like to highlight the role of game designers in shaping players' decision-making regarding their privacy. Designers have indeed a responsibility regarding the way privacy information is communicated as well as the choices that are made available to players to take control over their personal data. We however acknowledge that designers might face challenges in the implementation of privacy-preserving designs. Conflicting economic incentives can indeed make the processing of players' data almost inevitable. Moreover, designers are not necessarily in the position in their organizations to make decisions on how players' data are processed. Finally, even when they are willing to adopt a child-centered approach, designers may struggle to implement age-appropriate designs as the available guidance is often too broad and fragmented into different reports and recommendations. With our paper, we therefore attempt to provide game designers with a comprehensive overview of the age-appropriate design strategies available to them. We also invite them to use our evaluation matrix to test the extent to which they implement those strategies in their games. We however recognize that information provision has some inherent limitations, as some data practices might be too abstract or complex to be easily explained in a children-adapted way. Moreover, it can also be burdensome for the player to process the privacy information and make decisions about their own privacy. Consequently, additional protective measures also need to be considered by game designers, especially if their games are accessed by children. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this presentation and want to have more information, you can access our full paper by scanning this QR code.